He never found what he was looking for. He died believing he had reached Asia. He never set foot on the land that would become the United States. And yet, everything that America became, for better and worse, starts with him. This is the story of Christopher Columbus, not the hero, not the villain, the mechanism, the first link in a chain of power, wealth, and dispossession that runs from 1492 to the present day. The man who set the template for how this continent would be taken, organized, and ruled. He arrived on October 12, 1492, on an island he called San Salvador. He planted a flag. He claimed the land for a crown that had never seen it, and in doing so, he enacted a legal principle, backed by the Vatican itself, that would shape American law for the next 500 years. This series is called The Men Who Built America. We begin here with Columbus because before you can understand how a nation was built, you have to understand how a continent was taken. And before you understand how a continent was taken, you have to understand who authorized it, who financed it, who benefited, and how those same networks of power, those same families and institutions, echo through every subsequent episode of this series. The men who built America did not work alone. They operated through networks, banking families, secret societies, royal courts, and corporate structures that passed wealth and power from one generation to the next with extraordinary efficiency. Columbus is where that network first touches the Western Hemisphere. And if histories like this interest you, then kindly click the subscribe button and like this video. Let's start at the beginning. Cristoforo Colombo is born around 1451 in Genoa, in what is now northwestern Italy. His father is a wool merchant. His family is comfortable but not wealthy. By any measure, Columbus is not a man of the ruling class. But Genoa is not just any city. In the 15th century, Genoa is one of the most powerful commercial republics in the Mediterranean. Its merchant banking families, the Spinola, the Centurione, the Di Negro, are the financial backbone of European trade. They have colonies in the Black Sea, the Aegean, and along the Atlantic coast of Africa. They understand, better than almost anyone, how money moves across borders and how to profit from controlling the choke points. Columbus grows up inside this world. He works on Genoese merchant ships from his teens. He sails to England, to Iceland, and down the West African coast, routes controlled by Portugal. He learns navigation. He learns seamanship. And he becomes convinced, studying the maps and calculations available to him, that a westward route to Asia is possible. What is less often discussed is who finances Columbus when the Portuguese crown says no. When King John II of Portugal rejects his proposal in 1484, Columbus turns to Spain, but not directly. He spends years in the Spanish court, and his cause is taken up by a network of Genoese merchants already embedded in the Spanish financial system, men who stand to profit enormously if Columbus opens a western trade route. Among them, Francesco Pinelli and Giannotto Berardi, both Genoese bankers operating in Seville. Berardi, in particular, becomes a key financial backer and later manages Columbus's early voyages. The Genoese banking network, the same families who had been financing Mediterranean trade for 2 centuries, sees the westward voyage not as exploration, but as investment. And their investment is protected by something even more powerful than money. It is protected by the church. Columbus returns from his first voyage in March 1493. He brings parrots, gold samples, spices, and 6 Taino people he has kidnapped and intends to present to the Spanish court. He has not reached Asia. But he has reached something, and the Spanish crown moves immediately to secure it. Pope Alexander VI, Rodrigo Borgia, the most politically calculating pope of the Renaissance, issues a series of papal bulls in May 1493. The key document is Inter Caetera. Its language is precise and extraordinary. It grants to the Crown of Castile all islands and mainlands found, and to be found, discovered and to be discovered west of a line drawn in the Atlantic, on the condition that the indigenous peoples be converted to Christianity. Non-Christian peoples, the document states, have no sovereign rights over their own land. Their territory is legally vacant. It is available for Christian monarchs to claim. This principle, which legal scholars call the Doctrine of Discovery, is not merely a medieval curiosity. It has been cited in U.S. federal court decisions as recently as 2005. It is the legal foundation on which Native American land dispossession was justified from the colonial period through the 20th century. In 2005, the Supreme Court ruled in City of Sherrill v. Oneida Indian Nation that the Oneida people could not reassert sovereignty over land they had repurchased in New York State because, the court held, citing a 1823 precedent rooted in the Doctrine of Discovery, fee title purchased by Indians does not restore tribal sovereignty. A papal bull from 1493, designed to authorize Columbus's conquests, was still shaping American property law in the 21st century. The Vatican formally repudiated the Doctrine of Discovery in 2023, 430 years after Inter Caetera was issued. The legal structures it created have not been fully dismantled. This is the template Columbus set: conquest authorized by religious authority, backed by financial networks, and embedded in legal structures durable enough to outlast empires. Every subsequent episode in this series will show you variations of the same pattern. The island of Hispaniola, today divided between Haiti and the Dominican Republic, had a population of somewhere between 250,000 and 500,000 Taino people when Columbus arrived in 1492. By 1542, 50 years later, the population was functionally zero. Extinct. The causes were multiple. Epidemic disease, smallpox, measles, influenza, killed the majority as it would kill indigenous populations across the Americas in the decades that followed. But disease was not working alone. Columbus imposed a gold tribute system on the Taino of Hispaniola in 1495. Every adult Taino was required to deliver a fixed quantity of gold dust every 3 months. Those who failed had their hands cut off. This is not allegation. It is documented in Spanish sources, including the account of Bartolomé de las Casas, a Spanish priest who witnessed it and spent the rest of his life trying to document and condemn what he saw. Columbus also initiated the transatlantic slave trade. On his second voyage in 1493, he shipped approximately 500 Taino captives to Spain. About 200 died in transit. Queen Isabella ordered the survivors returned. She regarded enslaving her new subjects as legally questionable. Columbus disagreed. He continued enslaving indigenous people throughout his time as governor of Hispaniola. He was eventually arrested. In 1500, the Spanish crown sent Francisco de Bobadilla to investigate complaints about Columbus's administration of Hispaniola. Bobadilla found enough evidence of brutality and misgovernance that Columbus was arrested, put in chains, and sent back to Spain. He was released without trial, but stripped of his governorship. He never returned to Hispaniola. The charges against him did not mention the genocide of the Taino. They were about his failure to manage the colony efficiently for the crown. The killing of indigenous people was not the crime. Inefficient administration was the crime. That distinction tells you everything about whose interests the system was designed to protect. Columbus died in Valladolid, Spain, on May 20th, 1506. He was 54 years old and still disputing his contract with the Spanish crown, insisting on the titles and revenue shares he had been promised for his discoveries. He died relatively wealthy but legally embattled and convinced, to the end, that he had reached Asia. His son Diego Columbus spent decades fighting to enforce his father's contract with the Spanish crown, eventually winning the title of Admiral of the Indies and Governor of Hispaniola, though with greatly reduced authority. Diego's son Luis, Christopher Columbus's grandson, eventually sold his hereditary claims to the Spanish crown in exchange for a lump sum and a noble title. The Columbus lineage was bought out. The empire that his voyages had made possible was consolidated by others. The Genoese banking families who had financed the voyages, Berardi, Pinelli, and their networks, absorbed the profits of early Caribbean trade and reinvested them in the expanding Atlantic commercial system. The Spinola family, connected to the Genoese merchants who backed Columbus, later became major financiers of the Spanish Empire. These banking networks are ancestral to the European merchant banking families that would eventually become the backbone of Anglo-American finance. The Spanish crown, enriched by American silver and gold, became the dominant European power for a century. When that dominance declined, the capital and commercial networks it had created passed, through war, marriage, and financial transfer, to the Dutch and then to the British. The Bank of Amsterdam, 1609. the Bank of England, 1694, and eventually the financial systems of the American Republic all descend from the commercial infrastructure that the Spanish conquest of the Americas made possible and necessary. Columbus did not build America. He made America possible, and he made it possible in a specific way, on a specific template. Extraction, theological authorization, legal dispossession, financial networks operating across borders, power passing between institutions rather than individuals. Every man in this series is his inheritor. Some acknowledge it, most do not. Columbus did not operate in a secular world. He operated in a world in which the Roman Catholic Church was simultaneously a spiritual institution, a legal authority, and a political power capable of dividing the non-Christian world between competing Christian empires with a single document. The network behind Columbus was layered. At the surface, Spanish monarchs seeking trade revenue and Genoese merchants seeking return on investment. Behind that, a Vatican that understood hemispheric control as both theological mission and geopolitical power. And behind that, a system of law, canon law, Roman law, and the emerging law of nations that was being written in real time to legitimize what was happening. The Doctrine of Discovery was not only a religious principle, it was a legal technology, a way of converting raw military and commercial power into enforceable property rights. Once embedded in law, it reproduced itself automatically, without requiring further violence. The violence had done its work. The law maintained the result. This is the pattern you will see repeated in every episode of this series. The men who built America did not operate primarily through violence, though violence was always available and sometimes used. They operated primarily through law, theology, finance, and the institutional structures, courts, corporations, banks, universities, clubs, that convert raw power into inherited privilege. Columbus was the first. He arrived with 3 ships, a letter from a queen, and a papal bull. The indigenous people he encountered had none of those things. The asymmetry was not military. It was legal, financial, and institutional. And it was that asymmetry, not military superiority alone, that determined the outcome. Remember that, because you will see it again. In the next episode, we move from the 16th century to the 17th, from a Genoese mariner to an English Puritan governor, from the Caribbean to Massachusetts. The template Columbus carried across the Atlantic is about to be planted in the soil of what will become the United States. His name is John Winthrop, and his sermon, delivered on a ship crossing the Atlantic in 1630, is still being quoted by American presidents today. Thank you for sticking till the end. If you haven't already, kindly hit the subscribe button to encourage our work. Also hit the notification icon, like this video, share it to friends, and leave your comments below to help the algorithm spread the video far and wide. See you in the next episode.